Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Mann. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Join the free Modern Taoist community on Patreon at patreon.com/themoderntaoist or visit the website at dawananda.com. And now, the Modern Taoist.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Taoist. A couple of things today as we get started. First of all, this is going to be our first episode that also is available on video. Now, I'm telling you that because if for some reason the video does not work or does not show up and you're only getting the audio, okay. It's like we're trying to make it work, okay? So it's possible that it won't, and I don't know. The other thing, it's kind of exciting to tell you, is that I got the notification. Again, these are the things that sneak up on me because I don't really pay attention to stuff like this. But I got the notification this morning that this is as I'm recording this, is our 1 year anniversary from the first episode that I recorded for the Modern Taoist. So it's been a year, and I couldn't have done it without all of you guys. I wouldn't have done it without all of you guys, first of all, because I would say the first, 15 episodes, I don't know who I was talking to. there was like 27 of you. And then from that point on, it just kind of every week there was another 100 and another 100 and another 200 and another 300. And it just kind of snowballed after that. And that was super cool to see. And I appreciate that. I was looking around yesterday on just various, because I wanted to kind of get an idea of the experience of watching video podcast, in a realm like this one. And something like the top 3 Buddhist podcasts on YouTube are all AI generated. That was very disappointing. That was very disappointing to see that people are falling for that. But it is what it is, right? There's nothing that I can control about that or that I can do about it. So I just, I move on. We get a lot of questions about emotions in Taoism, because I do understand that there's this sort of, reputation that Taoist is very, Mr. Spock. You know what I mean? It's very live long and prosper, logic, no emotions, blah, 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 blah. And that couldn't be furthest from the truth. Just because Taoists can keep their emotions in alignment does not mean that they are not emotional people and don't have emotions. But one of I think the biggest question that we get all the time, other than how do I meditate, which is probably the number one question, I think the biggest question we get on a consistent basis is, how do I deal with this loved one? Or how do I love someone differently? Or how do I navigate this failing relationship? Or how do I navigate my relationship with my kids going downhill? Because at most times in most people's lives, love and relationship have become the same word, right? People equate one with the other. And that happened, that just is a natural occurrence thing. But what it has also done has caused an extraordinary amount of suffering that goes largely unnamed, truthfully, because the suffering doesn't fit the story that we tell about love. Because the stories we tell about love are about connection and about finding and two people choosing each other, or a parent loving their child unconditionally. They're always these great, wonderful, positive stories. The suffering that we find from relating love with relationships comes from the confusion between love and relationship. Like from the outside, you can see all kinds of dynamics. Somebody that can't let go, somebody that loves the wrong person, someone that mistakes feelings for future plans. And so the advice that we get from well-meaning people is always this kind of move on, get over it, find somebody that deserves you. There's plenty of fish in the sea, stuff like that. And that misses the point entirely, because the question is not whether love should be redirected or whether it should be felt in a certain way. The question is, why have we decided that love, which is not housed inside a reciprocal relationship, is inherently a problem? Why is it a problem to love someone despite the fact that you're not with them, or despite the fact that they are treating you terribly? We treat love as a wound that needs to be healed, or an attachment that needs to be released, or an error that needs to be corrected. And look, sometimes, yes, if you're in an abusive relationship or something like that, you have to move on. But that is my point. That is the relationship. Love is its own individual state. It's its own quality of being. But we have reduced love to mean relationship. We've reduced love to a transaction that requires a certain amount of input from both parties. And Taoism is one of the few traditions that takes this seriously. As a genuine philosophical position about what love actually is, where it lives, and what it requires in order to be real. The answer is considerably less, lack of a better word, comfortable than the version of love that we know. But it is considerably more freeing, I can tell you that. Because the version of love most people are taught from the time you were a tiny little baby is relational. Love is something you have for someone and that you give to someone, and someone has a response that's built into the definition. To love someone without being loved back, you are in an incomplete state. There's half of something that requires two halves. To love someone you cannot be in a relationship with romantically is a tragedy. Or, at its worst, a psychological dysfunction, right? To love someone who has hurt you or left you or simply unavailable is something that needs to be fixed rather than something that needs to be understood. Now, this version of love is everywhere. It's in every song that treats unrequited feelings as some kind of like I said earlier, an open wound. Every therapeutic framework, relationship counseling, etc., addresses that loving the wrong person is a pattern that needs to be broken. Every social convention treats people who still love someone who has moved on as someone who hasn't done the emotional work. You guys know how I feel about that particular therapeutic trope. What we're describing is not, I want to be clear here. That's not love, right? That is attachment. Okay? Attachment and love, two different things. Attachment is relational. Attachment requires an object, a structure, a reciprocal arrangement, something to hold on to, a deal, a contract, a vow. Attachment is the part of love that hurts when it's gone, when it is broken, when it is not returned. Attachment is what produces anxiety. Attachment is real, and it's human, and it's not something to be dismissed, and that's not what I'm trying to do, but it is not, let me say it clearly, it is not love. It is what love gets mixed with when love enters the relationship, which causes most people to not be able to tell the difference between love and attachment because they experience them at the same time. And when the relationship ends, they grieve them together. You see what I'm saying? And they never think to ask whether the love itself, forget about the attachment, forget about the relationship, forget about the need to be confirmed. They start questioning whether they still love that person or whether that person still or ever did love them. Right? If love is truly a state of being that exists between two people, the love cannot disappear based on the lack of attachment. It can't, or it wasn't love in the first place. All right? And a lot of us are not honest enough with ourselves when we are in these kinds of romantic relationships, what I'm talking about now. We'll get on to other kind of relational things in a minute, but most of us are not honest enough with ourselves to admit that they still love someone who they haven't been attached to. Because then, if they love someone, then they're betraying themselves or whoever they're in a relationship with now, because love is being glumped. Is that a word? Love is being lumped in with relationship. All right. And that's where this thing gets confusing, and that's where it causes a lot of damage. A person ends a relationship and is then told by friends and therapists and general wisdom and culture and songs and movies that they need to stop loving that person. Stop loving them. Stop loving them. That continuing to love them is a sign that you are an idiot. You have unfinished emotional business. You're nuts. That's not how it works. Love isn't a symptom that needs to be cured. And the cure is always, here's the cure, they say, oh, just stop feeling it. Oh, okay, I'll just stop. I'll just stop feeling love. Can you do that? No, of course not. These kinds of things are where we have gotten sideways as human beings. I'm not saying the advice is right all the time. Of course, there are issues. Attachment that keeps a person from moving forward with their life, that's a problem. But the assumption underneath it, that the love and the attachment are the same thing, that's what causes the harm. Because you can detach from someone easily. Well, maybe not so easily sometimes, but you can detach from someone. But to say you just need to stop loving them, that's not how love works. That is not, you don't get to voluntarily have emotions. You can voluntarily pretend to have emotions. You can have the performance of emotion, but you don't get to voluntarily turn emotions on and off. That's not how emotions work. Because deep inside, there is something there that you are ignoring. Love does not require relationship. Love is a separate thing from the relationship that housed it. The relationship is the house of love. The relationship gives love somewhere to be expressed and received, which is very valuable. But the love existed before the relationship began, and it continues to exist after it ends. And treating it as a pathology is an error, and it screws people up in here, inside. It screws people up to tell them that loving someone is a bad thing. Because love is fine. The relationship might have been bad. The attachment might have been bad. The circumstances might have been bad. But it is never a bad thing to love someone. Enable them? Bad. Right? Put up with nonsense? Bad. Allow yourself to be abused? Bad. But the love is not the problem. Think of it, let's move to a Taoist way of thought, of nature. This is how Lao Tzu describes loving someone as a weather system, as something that moves through you, has its own conditions, its own state of being. If you're outside in the storm is not dependent on the behavior of you. Love is not dependent on the behavior of the person you love. When it rains, the rain does not require the ground to appreciate it. The rain is simply the rain. The ground is going to respond as it responds. It's either going to absorb or reject. The rain's going to fall. It's going to keep falling. It's going to do what it's going to do. Love is the rain. Love is going to do what it's going to do. If it falls and gets rejected, okay. If it falls and gets absorbed, okay. But the rain is not going to change based on whether the ground says yes or no. And I'm not talking about the physical act of love. I'm talking about the emotion. This is where we get so many things confused. We have the physical act of love, the relational act of love, the transactional act of love. Those are all three different things. I'm talking about the emotional, deep wellspring of feeling that we have named love. We've all experienced it in some way. The love for a parent who died before your relationship was repaired. The love for a child who has become estranged and will not receive your love. The love for a friend who has moved on with their life. They may have been in your life for a little while, now they've moved on, and you still think about them, and you have this kind of a warmth with nowhere to go. We have determined that that is holding on to something that shouldn't be held on to. Right? Lao Tzu describes love as the deep parental quality of love. In chapter 67, describes love as one of the three treasures. Specifically not relational in the transactional sense. It is described as the quality of the person rather than the quality of the relationship. Something that is present in the sage regardless of how it is received. Love flows outward and is not required to flow back. Love is not a scoreboard. We don't keep account of what we give and what we receive. That is relationship. Love is a state of being. A state of being that Taoism holds as the highest form. Love that requires reciprocation is always, to some degree, conditional. Not in the I will only love you if you love me back sense, but in a deeper sense, that the continuation of the feeling is bound to the continuation of the response. I'll continue to give you love if you give me love in return. That is not love. When the response changes, the feeling changes. Not love. When the relationship ends, the feelings end. That's not love. It may be the highest form of like you have, but if you can turn it on and off, it's not love. It can fade. It can go into the background. You can be divorced for 15 years and not see that person, but there's still something in the background if there was love in the first place. Because the love that I'm talking about, the true meaning of it, is something you can't argue with. Because every argument somebody could put forth to me about this, I'm going to be able to say that's relationship, that's transaction, that's circumstance. To most people raised in the romantic tradition of love, this sounds like either spiritual bypassing or pathology. Either a spiritual practitioner who claims to love all beings equally from a serene distance, or the person who cannot accept that a relationship is over. It's not either one of those two things. Okay? I'm not talking about love everyone on the earth because the earth is wonderful. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about the recognition that love and relationship are two different things. They can exist together. They can exist apart. But love does not become less real or less genuine in the absence of the relationship. Now, this applies to places other than romantic love, right? I brought it up a minute ago, but let's do it again. Think of someone who you have a relationship with and it goes sideways. Maybe it's a parent and that person dies. And the relationship is over in the most final possible sense. But your love for them does not end. It continues. Sometimes it intensifies because that's what grief does. Right? The love is separated from everything that it was entangled with, and you can still feel the love, even though that relationship has no chance of coming back. Okay? We talk about this in context of parents and children who have become estranged, or parents or you and your siblings who maybe you don't speak anymore, or you've had an argument, or they are quote unquote high maintenance, or you are quote unquote high maintenance. Whatever the situation, you don't have a relationship with your siblings anymore, or your children, or your parents. But the love is still there. Sure, maybe you can't stand them. Love and like, not the same thing. I can love someone intensely and not want to be in their presence at all. By the same token, there can be people that I love being in their presence all the time because they're just cool people. But I don't have a love relationship with them. If they disappeared tomorrow, I would be like, all right, see ya. We need to realize and try to, as Taoists, we need to embrace the differences between our emotional state and the house that emotion is in. Right? Relationships that ended not through death, but through choice, through estrangement, through simple fact that two people's lives moved in different directions, or that one person was a banana head and screwed stuff up. The love is still there. It still continues. It may get stuffed down deep. It may get buried. It may not ever be brought up again. But there's still love. Because love is a state of being and has nothing to do with the relationship. The practical consequence of confusing love and relationships is that people spend And here's where we get into what we hate about, well, hate's a big word, but what we try to avoid in Taoism, and that is the spending of energy that simply causes our situation to become worse. Piling pain on top of pain, piling layer on top of layer on top of layer. People that confuse love and relationship spend this enormous amount of energy trying to manage those layers. They stay in situations that they should leave because they believe leaving the situation means losing the love. Or they return to people who have hurt them because the love is still there and they can feel it, and it feels like a reason to go back. They suppress their own limits and their own needs because the relationship requires it. Because the relationship feels like a container that love needs to have. None of this is necessary. The love does not live in the relationship. The relationship is the place where love can express itself, but it's not the only place. And when the relationship is no longer serving the person, whether it's become a container that is damaging rather than nurturing, or when staying is costing more than leaving, the love does not require the person to stay. The love can stay. The relationship can end. These are not the same events. Same thing if you have, like I said earlier, problems with a parent or a sibling. Sometimes, in order to keep our health, we have to detach from them. Whether it's our physical health or our mental health, sometimes we have to detach from them. But that doesn't mean we have to stop loving them. And it doesn't mean that we have to stop worrying and caring about the outcome of their life. It doesn't mean you have to express it to them. It doesn't even mean you have to talk to them. This is where we get into the problem in modern psychotherapy, where they're like, well, you just got to talk it out. You just got to talk about it. You need to call her. You need to bring it up. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's relationship. If you want to repair the relationship, then talk about the relationship. But the love doesn't require that. Love does not require permission, but it also does not require access. So if you have a sibling or a parent or a child that is just not in a good place in their life. Maybe they've got some addiction problems. Maybe they've got some violence issues. Maybe they've got some many things going on in their lives that cause them to be an emotional vampire every time they are around. Just because you love them does not mean you have to allow them to have access. Love and access, two different things. The emotional experience of loving someone and then not being around them is hard. I'm not going to pretend it's not. But again, that's a different state of being. That's grief, is what that is. Grief for the story is what that is. It's grief for the story. It's not grief for the person. Grief for the story, for the future that you imagined that you would have with this person, the emotional expectations that never came true, the shape of their life that you thought would turn out differently, the shape of your relationship with them that you thought would turn out differently. That is disappointment based on expectation. And so therefore you grieve, but you're grieving the story, not the person. Underneath the grief, the love itself is often still there. Not diminished, still present if you pay attention and if you're honest with yourself. The freeing that this understanding offers you is not the freedom from pain. It's because the pain of a relationship ending is real. regardless of the philosophical framework you bring into it. The freedom is the belief that the love has to go too, because it does not. There is no reason you have to stop loving someone in order to move forward with your life, whether it is an ex-romantic partner or a sibling who is doing you dirty, or a parent who just doesn't understand you and you guys are estranged, you're not talking anymore. You can move on with your life and the love can still exist. And maybe the relationship will return, maybe it won't. But the love itself is its own separate thing. Right? You're allowed to love people that you're not in a relationship with. You are allowed to love people who did not love you back. You are allowed to love people who have hurt you, who have left, who are gone, without that love being a problem that needs to be solved. Love is never the problem. The confusion between love and relationship, that is what causes the suffering. And the suffering lifts, not all at once, but genuinely, when those two things are finally understood as separate. When you can finally understand the difference between love and your relationship with that person, being it romantic, familial, whatever. Love in the Taoist sense is not a feeling. What? Okay. Feelings are responses to conditions. And they change as conditions change. They rise and fall. They're shaped by chemistry and circumstance and accumulated history, etc., etc. What we're talking about is a deeper, non-transactional quality called love. A fundamental orientation towards the well-being of the other person that does not depend on conditions in order for it to exist. And this is what I mean when I say love does not require reciprocation. A feeling requires something to be felt in response to something else. You can be disposed towards another person's well-being regardless of whether they know it, or whether they want it, or whether they are able to receive it, or whether they have earned it in any way. The disposition of love is yours. It's part of who you are. You don't turn that on and off. It doesn't ask permission to exist. The sage loves without possessing. The love is not an investment awaiting a return. It is not a claim on the person that is being loved. It is simply the orientation that we maintain toward the people in and out of our lives. Not because it produces anything, not because it's going to be rewarded in any way, but because it is what love is when it has been separated from everything that love has been confused with. The love that is available to you right now for any person in your life or any person out of your life, regardless of the state of any relationship that you have with this person, it does not require their permission. It does not require you to tell them. It does not require their presence. It does not require anything at all except your willingness to honestly feel it without confusing it with relationship. But I want to be very clear, my being a Taoist stance, Taoism's stance. Love, I said it a few minutes ago, and I want to repeat it. Love does not grant access. It does not grant permission. It does not entitle the person who loves to the time and attention and body and resources or emotional labor of the person that they love. It does not. The love is real. The rest of that is entitlement. These two things can coexist, sure, if the other person is, of the same mind. A person can love someone genuinely and still be making claims on that person that love was never meant to generate. The parent who loves their child and believes that love entitles them to control, to access, to know everything, to have opinions, to be included in decisions. That person, the parent, is not expressing love badly. They're expressing love, but confusing it with ownership. The love is genuine. The love of a parent that acts in a controlling way is genuine. I'm not denying the love. It's the claim of ownership. Right? The ownership claim is not love's consequence. That's not, no. The partner who loves someone and believes the love means they are owed some particular response, particular levels of attention, particular expressions of care, particular confirmations that the love is being returned, is not in a loving relationship. They're in a transactional relationship that has been given the name of love. The love may be real, not denying that. The transaction is not a requirement. It is the anxious attachment that arrived alongside the love. And sure, you both together, that you have the same amount of love back and forth between each other, then you can set expectations together. Agreements together. But one person having an expectation that the other one does not know about, that's not love, that's ownership. If you make these decisions together, totally different. What love actually requires is the simplest thing. Also a very hard thing. It requires you to genuinely want good things for that person, regardless of your existence. You want them to flourish. You want them to succeed. You want their growth, their capacity to live well on their terms, not as how you define it, not their growth in the direction that you prefer, not their relationships with other people that you approve of, but their actual happiness, which sometimes means being a part of your life, and sometimes it means being as far away from you as they can physically get, because that's just the way the world works. That's just the way human beings are. Sometimes it means receiving what you can give, and sometimes it means getting what they need from somewhere else. Sometimes looks like the love is being expressed, and sometimes it looks like the love is being rejected. You truly love them. You don't care if they reject it. Not talking about stalking, not talking about creepy. I'm talking about the genuine, deep emotion. You are capable of this. Most people are more capable than they know to understand the difference. We just haven't been taught, because we've been practicing it as the same thing for years. But think about this. You still carry love for people that are gone. You know you do. I can sit here, I can give you 5 seconds, and I guarantee every one of you are thinking of 5 people There are people that have left your life, whether it's through death, divorce, estrangement. You can think of people that you still love deeply. So you have the capacity to know the difference. That love is real. It has always been real. And the fact that you still feel it despite their absence means it was love. So for those of you that are struggling with estranged parents, siblings that have gone off the rails, children that won't listen to a word you say despite the fact that you know what's best, just remember, love does not require a relationship to confirm it. Love is its own separate state of being. Now let's move on to our listener question. We brought it up earlier in the show. Our two biggest questions are always about relationships and meditation. And this one comes to us from Randall in Salt Lake City. And in the SLC, he says, Kit, how do you know when you are truly meditating and not just being quiet? Randall, this is a question that many meditation instructors won't address because they can't. So let me give you the honest answer. All right. Being quiet and meditating are two different things. And the difference is not obviously obvious. Obviously obvious? Particularly when you're starting out and don't have a reference point for what the deeper state of meditation actually feels like. Being quiet, here's the best way I can describe it. Being quiet is the suspension of external noise. Okay? You sit, the room is still, the phone is away. It's surface. The surface of things have stopped moving. This is a most valuable step. And it's so valuable, in fact, that this is the part that most people screw up on and end up leaving the meditation practice because they don't get enough of it. But in the quiet state, the mind is almost certainly still running, replaying, planning, generating commentary. The quiet outside is not necessarily produced inside. And when I say inside, I mean inside your noggin. The thoughts are simply happening in a room with fewer sounds and fewer distractions. Okay, so that's one thing. The Taoist understanding of meditation, which is different from a Zen state or a Zazen state. The Taoist understanding of meditation is that the thoughts will still arrive. What changes is what happens when they arrive. In ordinary quiet, a thought arrives and you follow it into the story that it wants to tell, which leads to the next thought that follows from that. Okay, and then it's like a train of thought. That's why it's called that. Right? That's what happens in quiet. The difference, you say, what is the difference between quiet and meditation? There you go. In meditation, a thought arrives, you notice it, and you release it, and you don't follow it to the next, to the next, to the next, down the track. You observe it in the way you might observe a cloud. You register its presence, but you don't soar into the sky and jump up on it and try to ride it around like a Shetland pony, okay? Your thoughts are, sorry, that made me laugh. Your thoughts are the clouds. You are the sky. The sky does not attempt to move the clouds. It just doesn't notice them. And if the clouds get big and bold enough, the sky goes, neat. The sky does not become the weather. Understand? And you'll notice that the signal that something has shifted is going to be real subtle when you get to that point. There's this quality of spaciousness. When you get to the point where you are truly meditating and not just being quiet, there is a sense of more room. You can be sitting in a closet and it'll feel like you're outside in a meadow. Time will feel different. The sense of yourself as a solid, continuous physical being will be a little less insistent. Now, we've gotten confused in the West about meditation because of movies and TV and books that we've read and lies that people have told us about the state that they have become. A true meditative state in the Taoist tradition is not a big dramatic experience. It's something that you get to quietly over the course of many, many, many attempts. And if you do it correctly, it doesn't feel like many, many attempts because you get a little better each time. So the practical answer to your question, if you wonder whether you are meditating or wandering itself is the mind engaging and evaluating, keep sitting. Because that question arises from the thinking mind. So keep sitting. Keep being quiet. The difference between quiet and meditation is vast, but one leads to the other. And the distinction will become clearer through meditation, not through analysis. Your Taoist assignment for this week: bring someone to mind that you love or have loved who is not currently in your life. Someone estranged, someone who's passed away, someone who has moved on. Sit with the love. Separate from the relationship. Notice what is still there. Not the grief, not the attachment, not the longing, because that's a tough one, but the love. The quality of care that you have for that person's happiness. If it is there, notice what it feels like and let it exist without requiring anything from it. Without feeling the need to express it, to call them, to email them, nothing like that. Love them without it being a problem, without it being a wound that needs to heal. Love as its own state. That is what this episode was about, not as a relationship. It's not a transaction that requires two people to complete it. It is not a relationship waiting for someone to live. It is a state of being. If this one gave you something to sit with, pass it on. Send it in. If you have a question, send it in. If an idea came up, let me know. Follow us over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/themoderntaoist. Hopefully the video worked. I don't know. If it didn't, we'll try again next week. If this one gave you something to sit with, as I said, pass it on to somebody that can use it. And until next time, thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Join the free Patreon community at patreon.com/themoderntaoist and subscribe to the podcast for new episodes every Tuesday and weekend Taoism check-ins every Friday. Visit the website at taoananda.com and don't forget to like and follow us on whatever platform you find us.